What? I'm a collector. Oh, almost forgot one thing. This is the way. What is up, everybody? Random Man here, bringing you my review for The Mandalorian and Grogu, or as my ticket here indicates, Star Wars The Mandalorian and Grogu, in one take. Now, the plot of this science fiction film is set after the fall of the Galactic Empire and follows the titular Mandalorian and his apprentice Grogu as they work for the New Republic in rescuing Rada the Hutt in exchange for information on a target. Going into this movie, I had moderate expectations. Now, I showed off with my intro that clearly I am a fan of the Mandalorian and Grogu themselves, especially Grogu, or as he was called before he officially got a name, Baby Yoda, because he's clearly from the same species as Yoda is from in the Star Wars franchise. As there's a lot going into this movie, or you could say not a lot, depending on who you're asking, because this is the first theatrically released Star Wars movie that we've gotten since 2019. The last one was Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, and this is also the first theatrically released Star Wars film that we've gotten ever since we have been just inundated with a bunch of Star Wars content that has mainly been streaming through Disney+. Now, the first season of The Mandalorian dropped a month before The Rise of Skywalker hit theaters, and in between, we've just had so many streaming series, including, of course, The Mandalorian, which the first two seasons of The Mandalorian I love. And I never finished the third season. I saw the first few episodes, but for whatever reason, I never finished it. And I was told, and I looked up after, that not having seen any of the Mandalorian show on Disney Plus is not critical to watching The Mandalorian and Grogu, as this is a standalone story that does take place after season 3, but still, there's no prerequisite requirement for seeing that show to go into this movie. And yeah, like I said, I love the show for the first two seasons that I saw of it. And this may be a hot take, but I think this is probably the best that Disney has done with Star Wars since acquiring the property. Now, I haven't seen all of Andor. Don't crucify me, but I've only seen like the first couple of episodes or so. I will likely get to it at some point. A lot of people say that's the best thing that Star Wars has created since the original trilogy, and it's one of the best things ever. And then some of the shows in between The Mandalorian and now I've seen, but I've been pretty back and forth on, and yeah, I haven't seen everything. I'm a casual Star Wars fan mainly. I've made that clear even with the movies that I've seen and reviewed in the past ever since Disney acquired the property. And now we're getting this as basically an extension of a TV show now on the big screen, which honestly, for someone who loved the first two seasons of the show, I was excited to see on that front, but also part of me was thinking that this is now going to be the first big screen adventure in several years. But in any sense, I still went into this thing with an open mind, even with my own mixed expectations. And so, yeah, I went and saw this thing in theaters earlier, and with my screening, I actually got a few things. I got some cards with it. So here's the first one. These are like Pokemon-style cards, a similar thing here on the back of Grogu. Let's see, the next one here. Yep, here we go, of the ship. And then the last one, well, it's just promoting Star Wars Unlimited. It looks like it's a trading card game, I guess. I don't know. And then if you want to know too, my shirt is also Grogu themed. That's him with a Rancor. So yeah, pretty subtle detail, but it looks awesome. But in any sense, I've gone on long enough in setting this up. So starting out with the cast and their performances. We have Pedro Pascal, mostly in voiceover and also a few times in person, as the titular Mandalorian or Din Djarin. Now, I've always loved Pedro Pascal, as I've made it clear with other movies that I've seen starring him in it in the last several years, and him as this character I've always really liked. This is one of his signature roles, along with Joel in The Last of Us HBO TV series, and you know, he still gives a great performance here. I also have to give a shout out to the two actual body doubles that mostly play his character or their character when doing the action and everything else like that. That was great to see because, you know, of course we see Pedro Pascal when he is unmasked, as with the Mandalorian Creed, you're not supposed to ever take your helmet or mask off. But yeah, I still think he brings a lot to the character, very stoic, very straight-laced, everything like that. I also have to give a shout out to Grogu, because of course Grogu, to my estimation, is great. He's cute, and even though there's no actor that plays him, the puppetry and animatronics involved with him, the best I've ever seen in how this character has been just actualized. Of course, given that this is a big screen adventure, a lot more was given into the budget. So there's all that there, a lot of entertainment with him. You know, we love cute Muppet-style creatures like him and such. There are other notable members of the cast here. There's Sigourney Weaver, who works for the New Republic, who is mainly the one enlisting the Mandalorian and by extension Grogu to go ahead and rescue Rada the Hutt. And then Rada the Hutt is voiced by Jeremy Allen White. Now, you can hear hints of his voice after it's all been mixed and just all edited and remixed together to kind of sound like how Jabba the Hutt, who is the father of Rada the Hutt, sounded in the other appearances across Star Wars media. I thought his character was better realized than I initially expected, because there's an arc with him, and also how he is basically the heir to the Hutt throne, even though his twin aunt and uncle are basically there still ruling, and he has gone off on his own thing to become a gladiator type fighter. That was more depth than I initially expected here. And then there's also Martin Scorsese voicing a food truck operator, and it's easy to recognize his voice if you're looking for it as well. So that was cool to see or hear specifically. The cast here I did mostly like. I mean, Sigourney Weaver is likable in just about everything, even with the minimal screen time that she has, and all the other people that show up in between. I also have to give a shout out to the 4 little animatronic shrew-looking characters that were from the Mandalorian show that do show up here. Whoever voices them, I mean, they stole the show in many instances just for them talking like that all throughout. So yeah, mostly the cast here I think do well. And then getting into the writing of this film. Now, one of the co-writers of this film, Jon Favreau, is the director too, and he helped develop the show. One of the co-writers is also Dave Filoni, who's now the head of Lucasfilm, and he helped basically usher in a lot of what we got with Star Wars media, with Rebels, which is an extension of the Clone Wars show, and a bunch of other stuff here. So I haven't seen the animated Clone Wars or Rebels series. That's why I haven't seen the live-action Ahsoka series and a bunch of other stuff. I haven't seen everything in the Star Wars universe, aside from the main movies, of course, and The Mandalorian, among other multimedia. But in any sense, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are very much behind this project. Of course, Favreau previously directing a lot of episodes of The Mandalorian and helped develop it, and also previously directing a lot of other big budget films that a lot of them are some of my favorites that we've gotten in the modern era. So he was a good choice to be behind this thing. And but to see, I'm losing track here, back to the writing basically. So the writing, it's a story that's pretty basic. The titular characters are basically going after Rada the Hutt to rescue him, but then a bunch of twists and turns happen in between with some actual information. And what it boils down to is that it does feel like an episode of the TV show, or a few episodes of the TV show put together, as it runs at just about 2 hours and 15 or so minutes. And I thought mostly it was well paced, because it's a story that is basic, but it hits the ground running right away. We're basically dropped into the middle of a mission that the Mandalorian and Grogu are on the first 15 minutes or so, which was awesome. There was one tracking shot that has the camera slowly pan back to us, zooming in on the Mandalorian, taking a bunch of dudes out, and everything else there. It was really entertaining to see, because we were just dropped into the swing of things. There's quite a bit of action throughout this movie too, which I'll get to, but that is what helps give us a strong start. And then later, the mission that the main characters go on. They're dropped into the city where they think Rada the Hutt is at, and it looked like something straight out of Blade Runner, and with the nighttime and the neon signs and everything, just the seedy underbelly look of it. And a lot of the locations here are very stand out, looking like they would be in the Star Wars universe in any sense here. And it looked like it was shot like an actual film production, and not just necessarily taking a lot of what was done with the TV show and being shot in front of the volume or a big screen like that. it looked like there was a lot of care put into this thing, even if the budget is not necessarily the highest or in line with some of the other theatrically released Star Wars movies. And then the directing by Jon Favreau, yeah, like I said, it helps keep the movie going for the most part, and having the action in between. Like I said, the opening scene is very riveting with the Mandalorian taking a bunch of dudes out, also taking down 3 AT-ATs, and also just moving around with Grogu and just getting the job done. Now, what slows the movie down after a specific point, probably like 2/3 or so in, the movie then focuses a lot on Grogu himself. Now, as cute as he is, the movie I thought really grinded to a halt, because it's a lot more quiet. It's a lot more quiet and tenderly paced. And that made me feel the running time of this movie for a bit of it, even if there was purpose as to see what was being done here before the action ramps up again within the final act. And I think that mainly does hold the movie down, on top of the movie feeling mostly inessential, if you would. I mean, it's a light, rudimentary return for Star Wars on the big screen, but it has a lot of warm moments, mainly with Grogu, of course, keeping a lot of the younger viewers entertained, myself included. He consistently got chuckles out of me, a lot of visual moments, and then even some moments that just helped harken back to what I saw of the Mandalorian TV show, entertaining me, and just all the visual aesthetics and other technical elements being put in and down here. The original score, like in the TV show, was done by Ludwig Göransson, just coming off of his 3rd Oscar win for Best Original Score. He really goes hard with the score here, giving us the main theme from the TV series and also some original compositions here that helped set the mood and ambience all around. I mean, I thought that was just something that helped elevate the film, like what was done on the small screen. And also, like I said, just the visual effects, mostly they work, and then the practical effects on Grogu himself, I think, are the best that I've ever seen from him, and then a lot of faster moving moments. The cinematography here, I have to give a shout out to as well, because it was shot in IMAX. It was filmed for IMAX. I didn't see this thing in IMAX. I saw this at a Dolby Cinema at an AMC theater, like I saw with my previous review for Tuner. I'll have a link for that at the end of this video. But the sound, of course, was great, and how it was mixed and tuned. But the cinematography here, there's few select sequences that have the screen expand out. So imagine if you saw this on a bigger IMAX screen, the whole screen is going to be filled for certain sequences. And the first time we get that transition, it is great, just like on the TV show, where the Mandalorian is in the gladiator type arena where Rada the Hutt is being held, and the transition is just so clean and seamless, and we get that a couple of more times later on in the movie. But that sequence was one of the standouts of the movie for sure, in that arena, and then it turns into a chase sequence. Those are some of the best moments for sure of the movie, in helping keep up that whole entertainment value going. And basically, as a whole, I was entertained by the film. Even if I didn't think this movie really changed anything for Star Wars, it doesn't at all. This and the Mandalorian TV show take place in between the original film trilogy and the sequel film trilogy, so there's nothing of consequence that goes into the greater universe. This is just its own one-off standalone story, even though it's an extension of the TV show. I mean, from what I looked up, at the end of season 3, Mando and Grogu are settling down, but now, hey, with this movie taking place right after that, they're on a new adventure, and we get that here. And I think that it was good. It was good for what we were getting, even if Star Wars is held to a higher standard, as I'm mentioning in how there's been a lot of skepticism going into this movie. Reception for this thing has mostly been mixed, but I saw this thing with my little cousin Alex, shout out to you, his sister Sophia, shout out to you, Soph, and their dad, my cousin Alex. Shout out to all 3 of you. Little Alex specifically enjoyed the film. None of them had seen the TV show. So like I said, seeing the TV show is not a prerequisite to go ahead and seeing this movie here. So it's easy, very light to get into. There was a dad and daughter, I think, to my left. She had a Grogu plush, or like a puppet or a doll or something like that, so I can tell that she was getting entertained every time he was on screen. I think this movie is mostly harmless. I mean, it's nothing to necessarily write home about, as I'm emphasizing time and time again. I should just wrap up this review anyway, because there's not too much to say in the realm of things for this film. Of course, if you're going to see this thing, see it on the big screen, especially in IMAX, because those sequences really do stand out. and how this thing is something that for fans are going to get more out of what they enjoyed, even if the love of Star Wars has been really all over the place lately. I mean, just how it's been going with a lot of what we've been getting through Disney Plus and all this other stuff, and eventually we're hopefully going to get movies of grander scale again. But in any sense, even if this is not necessarily the grand return for Star Wars on the big screen, I still think that it is an enjoyable one, and it's one that I do recommend seeing. With all of that being said, my final verdict for The Mandalorian and Grogu is 3.5 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of The Mandalorian and Grogu. Social media links in the description. Subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.